Magandang hapon po mga kababayan. Kayo'y nakikinig dito lamang sa Radyo Migrante. Ako po si Waynes, kasama niyo sa kwentuhan at kulitan, pati na rin sa pagserbisyo sa bayan.
Good afternoon ho, this is Ems and I'm super happy na magkasama po ulit tayo.
Ako naman po si Julie, bumabati ng isang mapagpalayang tanghali sa ating lahat, especially to all our hardworking and diligent migrant workers sa lahat ng panig ng mundo.
Samahan niyo kami sa ating episode 19 ngayong July 17, 2023. Handog namin ang mga usaping nakasentro sa People's State of the Nation Address. Para sa episode na ito, magfo-focus tayo sa sektor ng mga katutubong Pilipino sa Canada at sa Pilipinas.
Ay, magandang usapan yan, Waynes. Mga kababayan, follow nyo rin po kami sa Instagram or Facebook namin. Hanapin lang ang Radyo Migrante Toronto. At kung gusto nyong mapakinggan ang mga dating episode, bisitahin lang ang aming YouTube channel.
Siyempre today, we will talk about the top news, ang kasaysayan tungkol sa State of the Nation Address, at babasahin natin ang tula ni Billy Ibarra mula sa grupong KM64. Makikinig din tayo sa pulso ng ating mga kababayan.
At hindi po nagtatapos ang episode natin kung wala ang Pinoy Tayo segment, kung saan makakakwentuhan natin si Gretchen Mangahas. Siya ang presidente ng grupong Kabenguetan in Canada. Pagkatapos, mapapakinggan natin ang mga latest community listings at events sa GTA.
Ang dami pala natin pag-uusapan today. So sige, umpisahan na natin. Para sa ating top 4 news this week, para sa unang balita, mula sa Manila Times, new law writes off 57 billion pesos of farmers' debt. Noong July 7, nilagdaan ni President Marcos Jr. ang bagong batas na nagkukundina o binubura ang mahigit 57 billion pesos worth of loans of more than 600,000 farmers who are agrarian reform beneficiaries. Itong Republic Act 11953 writes off, quote, all principal loans, unpaid amortization and interest, and exempting payment of estate tax on agricultural lands awarded under the Comprehensive Agrarian Reform Program. End quote.
And according sa dating Agrarian Reform Secretary Hernani Braganza, matagal na raw clamor ng mga mangsasaka ito na dapat ay magkaroon ng debt condonation o mas maayos na access sa lupa.
Mukhang timely itong pag-anunsyo ng debt condonation dahil malapit na ang SONA. Isang linggo na lang kaya't nagsisimula ng magpabango ang estado.
Para naman sa pangalawang balita mula sa Bulatlat, group condemns terrorist designation of 4 Cordillera activists. Mga Indigenous and human rights groups kinondem na ang terrorist designation sa 4 na Igorot activists sa may Cordillera, isang buwan lamang matapos maipanalo ang isang quote rebellion case and quote laban sa kanila. Inilabas ng Anti-Terrorism Council ang isang press release na nagsasabing terorista ang Cordillera People's Alliance pioneer na si Abelon Aliquez, ang chairperson na si Wendell Bolinget, Regional Council member Stephen Tauli at ang researcher na si Jennifer Awingan Tagaoa.
Ang pahayag ng Cordilleras People Alliance, quote, while we at CPA continue to seek legal remedies to ensure our safety, security, and human rights, in this shrinking democratic space, the state also weaponizes everything at its disposal to silence us. End quote.
Ayan, alam nyo, alalahanin din natin na itong mga Igorot activist ay humarap na sa korte para labanan ang mga gawa-gawang kaso na sinasampa sa kanila at paulit-ulit din nilang naipapanalo ito. Gayunman, nilabel pa rin silang terorista. Ipinapakita sa atin ng tunay na layunin nitong mga Anti-Terrorism Council ay puksain ang mga boses ng mamamayan at ng mga kritiko. Sabi nga ni Bolinget, yung isa sa mga Igorot activist na ni Red Tag, ang tingin niya dito sa red tagging, sabi niya, it is a government tool, a last resort when their systemic legal harassments fail to silence activists and the democratic mass movement. Para naman sa pangatlong balita mula sa Inquirer, Jollibee workers protest illegal termination in Jersey City. Noong July 6, nagtipon at nagprotesta ang mga former employees ng Jollibee sa Jersey City sa USA. Mga biktima daw sila ng illegal na termination. Ang protesta ay naganap sa araw ng National Fried Chicken Day, isa sa mga pinaka-busy na araw para sa Jollibee workers. Ang panawagan nila ay reinstatement, back pay at public apology mula sa Jollibee Food Corporation.
Valid naman ang kanilang mga panawagan. Ang nangyari kasi, nagpetition sa management ang 9 na employees para taasan ang kanilang sahod at ayusin ang working conditions sa Jollibee. Tapos, bigla silang tinanggal sa trabaho. Nung February 20 nangyari yan. Kaya ang claim ng grupo, retaliation ng Jollibee yun sa kanila. Kaya naman nung mga bandang June 30, nag-file ang mga Jollibee worker ng formal complaint against Jollibee sa may National Labor Relations Board or NLRB dahil sa unfair labor practices, which is yung illegal termination ng mga manggagawa na nag-exercise lang ng kanilang karapatan.
Tama, at napansin ko nga na lumalawak ang sakop ng grupong ito. Naaabot na rin ang mga ibang chains ng Jollibee. May sumisikat ng mga social media account na tinatawag na Justice for Jollibee Workers. Marami na agad ang followers, so to stay tuned, please follow their Instagram page or their Facebook page.
Saludo sa mga manggagawa sa Jollibee, it's every worker's right to organize and demand livable wages and better working conditions. So sige, follow natin yung Justice for Jollibee Workers na social media account. Pang-apat at ang huling balita galing sa Minister of Labor Immigration, Training and Skills Development. Sa January 1, 2024, ang mga temporary help agencies and recruiters ay required na kumuha ng lisensya para mag-operate. Patuloy po kayong nakikinig sa Radyo Migrante dito sa Toronto's Best Filipino Community Program, Vibe 105. Natungayan po ninyo ang mga balita at ngayon naman magbalik na tayo sa ating kasaysayan at kultura ng Pilipinas. Pakinggan po natin.
Maraming salamat, Waynes. Hello ulit. Hello ulit. My name is Ems, bringing you today's segment of ang ating kasaysayan. So tara, let's learn more about our history to remind ourselves na ang kasaysayan natin ay hindi lamang para sa kaalaman, kung hindi ang kasaysayan ay pwede rin natin gamitin paraan to get to know ourselves as Filipinos and our culture. Since pa-approach na tayo sa end of July, palapit na din ang annual State of the Nation Address sa Pilipinas o ang tinatawag ay SONA. So, alam niyo ba, Tita Julie at Waynes, na yung origins of this can be kind of traced back to 1898 where President Emilio Aguinaldo delivered something of an address during the Malolos Congress, pero hindi to siya naging tungkol as a State of the Nation dahil congratulatory message lamang laman nito. Then, ng mga susunod na taon, nagsimula na yung pag-deliver ng yearly report tungkol sa kalagayan ng Pilipinas dahil sa Section 21 ng Jones Law of 1916 kung saan nagre-require ang Governor General ng Philippines Islands mag-report ng mga transactions ng gobyerno sa isang executive office na siya namang magtatransmit ng report sa President of the United States. So, bakit pa kailangan natin mag-report sa gobyerno ng, President of the United States? Kasi during this time, ito yung mga panahon na tinatayo pa lang ang Philippine Commonwealth under American rule. So, dito na natin nakikita yung origin where it's actually interconnected with the US. So officially, we can say that the first ever State of the Nation address was delivered in November 25, 1935, during the opening session of Congress by then President Manuel L. Quezon. Pero pagbubuo ng petsa na yan ay it changed. Pero from what we know from since 1979, binabroadcast na to ikapang-4 na Lunes ng July since then. So, nakikita natin, SONA after SONA, ang tao at ibang sector, gaya ng peasants, opposition leaders, unions, at mamamayang Pilipino, ay actually nagtitipon para i-protest at kontra ang mga promises, said achievements of the current government. Kahit noon sa pag-establish ng SONA by the US, meron na mga Pilipino na salungat sa mga mensahe dito at nagde-demand for genuine change and genuine liberation para sa mamayang Pilipino. And so over the years, nakikita natin, ito ang tinatawag na People's SONA when the people are clamoring in the streets opposing the President's State of the Nation address. And with that, kahit dito sa North America, tulad sa mga bansang US and Canada, mga migranteng Pilipino ay nag-oorganisa din ng People's Response sa State of the Nation address by sharing yung conditions at demands ng migrants and Filipino people here and back home. So sa susunod na time that we talk about the Kasaysayan, we'll delve into more of that next time. So yeah, anong masasabi niyo, Wayne, sa Tita Jules?
Ay, ang ganda ng very shortened siya pero nandun lahat ng information. I think important to note na it's very valid na there is a need for a people's SONA kasi when you watch the President's SONA, makikita mo na there are exaggeration of claims at merong mga promises that are not really based on what the actual community is experiencing or what they actually need. So, dahil merong yung President's SONA doesn't reflect the reality of people's conditions, there, out of that born the need for people to have their own voices heard. Kaya merong People's SONA. Ganun din talaga dito rin sa Toronto, dito sa Canada. Yearly, merong People's State of the Nation address, just like you said, dahil ang mga migrante na Pilipino, marami ang kinakaharap at meron silang mga panawagan and they need that stage and that space to say that dahil para malaman din ng ibang tao kung ano ba talaga yung totoo as opposed to kung ano man ang sasabihin ni this year ni President Marcos Jr. So
that's right. Thank you, Waynes. I will close off pero I want to say that when we talk about bakit ba nagtitipon din ang mga migranteng Pilipino dito, because yung condition sa Pilipinas at yung mga nangyayari talagang policies also affect migranteng Pilipino dito. So there is still a huge connection between here and there. At ayan, ang ating kasaysayan. Did you learn something new about yourself or about our country? Share nyo lang naman sa aming Facebook page. Hanapin lang ang Radyo Migrante and join us again next week para sa marami pang pag-aaral ng ating history.
Patuloy po kayong nakikinig sa Radyo Migrante dito sa Toronto's Best Filipino Community Program, Vibe 105. Maraming salamat, Ems. At para sa susunod na segment, lumubog tayo sa ating kulturang Pilipino.
Ngayon naman para sa kulturang Pilipino, ako si Julie. Nais niyo bang makadiskubre ng mga makabuluhang kanta, tula mula sa iba't ibang musikero at makata? Ang segment na ito ay magsisilbing espasyo para sa iba't ibang pagtatanghal ng mga talento ng ating kababayang Pilipino. Ang featured na tula ngayon ay isinulat ni Billy Ibarra. Siya ay isang miyembro ng KM64. Ito ang definition mula sa kanilang page. Ang Kilometer 64 ay isang ugnayan ng mga makata at ng mga may natatanging hilig sa tula na ang karamihan sa mga kasapi ay nasa Pilipinas, ngunit may ilan din namang nasa ibang bansa. Nabuo ito noong March 14, 2003. Bilang isang organisasyon, isa sa kanilang layunin ay ang pagpapalaganap ng culture of patriotism. So narito ang tulang Love the Philippines by Billy Ibarra. Gasolinang laging nagtataas, 40 per kilo na bigas. Pamasahing nagmamahal, umento sa sahod na di umaandar. Mahal na upa sa bahay, presyo ng bilihing nakamamatay. Sa buong araw na hanap buhay, ilang beses na lang mapapahay. Mahal sa Philippines, mapaaaray ka. Mahal sa Philippines, ang sakit-sakit na. Buwis na nakakalula, magsasakang walang sariling lupa. Nag-aasin pa rin si Juan at Maria, kahit masipag mapagabi at umaga. Yugyugan sa palasyo, kengkuyan sa kongreso. Mga taong abusado ang namumuno sa bayan ko. Love the Philippines kahit umaaray ka. Love the Philippines kahit ang sakit-sakit na. Kikilos ang masa kahit abutin ng ilang dekada, hanggang sa makalaya sa mapagparusang sistema. Love the Philippines, huwag magsawa sa kanya. Love the Philippines, kumilos at tumindig ka.
Very timely pala yung poem na yan dahil yan yung bagong ad, di ba? Love the Philippines. Gustong-gusto ko talagang ipinakita niya na ang different reality sa Pilipinas. Pero at the end, sabi pa rin, love the Philippines talaga. Angkinin mo pa rin at ipaglaban mo pa rin ang bayan mo. Oh, ganda.
Oo, huwag daw magsawa kahit na masakit at mahirap kumilos. Kailangan kumilos at tumindig. Muli, ako si Julie. Lagi niyong maaasahan na maghahandog ng makabuluhang musika, tula at marami pang iba na nagdidiwang ng kulturang Pilipino dito lang sa Radyo Migrante 105.5 FM.
Sa ating PULSO segment, pakinggan natin ang mga saloobin ng ating mga kababayan na umattend sa Filipino Heritage sa Regent Park. Pakinggan po natin.
Ang pangalan niyo po at anong organization po kayo?
Okay, ang pangalan ko, SONA Hibuan. 62 years old na ako. First time ko nag-join sa Filipino community. Okay? But hindi ako nagsisisi dahil may connection ako rito. Dahil nung dumating kami sa Canada, 80s, dito kami nagsettle sa Oak Street, which is part of Regent Park community. Alam mo, natutuwa ako kasi nagkakaroon ng ganitong community. Dahil sa palagay ko hanggang ngayon, considering na maraming malaking population ng Filipino rito, is still underrepresented. So kailangan natin mga ito community leaders. Kaya nga nag-join ako to share my contribution since I'm a big fan of cycling.
I'm Twilight Beltran. Mary Ann asked kain tayo non-food Facebook chat. And she was asking for a Zoom instructor, and I so happened to be here because we lived here before. So my parents still live in Pickering, so we come here more often. And so we were here this weekend. So sabi ko, I'd love to, be involved.
And ang isyung question namin po sa inyo po, ang State of the Nation address po ay mangyayari soon. For the upcoming term, what are your demands as a Filipino that you do in the next term?
Okay, hindi nawawala yung economic. Maganda ekonomiya, it's good for everyone, di ba? I'm not a big fan of Duterte, the previous administration, and I'm not even a big fan of BBM, but we should give him a chance para tingnan natin kung ano mangyayari. So susunod, hindi ko pa alam. Matagal na akong wala sa Pilipinas, 45 years, but it's still up to date sa mga nangyayari. So hopefully, present administration, okay naman, wala namang mga issue pa, hindi nawawala yung alitan, yung mga dilawan, pinklawan, kung sino man yun. Pero hopefully, kung sino nakaupo ngayon, mapabuti ang economically.
Wonderful.
Doon ako uuwi.
I'm not really connected right now sa Philippines. But I really wish that he would not do as his, yung tatay niya, diba? Like the dictatorship. That he will listen more to the people and that talagang eradicate yung corruption kasi we're known for that. So maybe like a middle, in the middle, like strict discipline and like get rid of the corruption but not too violent. You know what I mean? But really I just want to see the Filipinos like rise higher kasi we have so much to offer.
So, alam ko sa SONA, palakpakan, sigawan, talunan. According nung isang senador, dahil yun sila, hindi pa sila magaling. So, kaya hindi makikita ang bulag-bulagan, bingi-bingian. So, tayong nandito sa Canada, nakita natin yun. Kaya tayo naglipat dito kasi ambisyon natin na magkaroon din ng mga hustisya sa atin.
Kung bibigyan po ng pagkakataon, ligtas, may maayos na trabaho, gusto niyo po bang bumalik at tumira sa Pilipinas?
O syempre, kasi Pilipino tayo. Kahit dito sa Canada, meron silang train, lahat, merong system. Pwede natin yan gawin sa atin. Kaya lang, hindi natin iniisip ang tinatawag na common good. Ating iniisip palagi anong makuha natin doon. sa concession, sa ano-ano pa, kahit ano, pero ang pinapaikot hindi yung hustisya o pag-iisip sa yung ibang tao ba. Lahat tayo bilang isang Pilipino, dapat ang inisip natin yung common good natin.
Maraming salamat po.
Walang anuman.
Patuloy po kayong nakikinig sa Radyo Migrante dito sa Toronto's Best Filipino Community Program, Vibe 105. Huwag kayong aalis mga kababayan. Makakasama natin si Gretchen Mangahas, ang President of the Association of Indigenous People of Benguet o Kabenguetan sa Canada for year 2022 to 2023. Mapapakinggan po natin yan after the break. Ayan! Ako po ang inyong host, si Waynes, para sa ating Pinoy Tayo segment o Pinoy Talakayan at Usapan. Dito natin mapakikinggan ang talambuhay ng ating mga kababayan na migrant workers, international students at iba pa. Halina't pakinggan natin ang fresh na perspectives ng ating mga kababayang Pilipino. Mapapakinggan natin today ang interview ni Amihan with Gretchen Mangahas, President of the Association of Indigenous People of Benguet o Kabenguetan, dito sa Canada for year 2022 hanggang 2023. Sige, pakinggan natin.
Kasama natin ngayon si Gretchen Mangahas. Welcome to Radyo Migrante, Ate Gretchen. We're so happy to have you here with us today. Please greet our listeners and introduce yourself. So pakibati na lang po ang ating mga listeners at ipakilala niyo yung inyong sarili, pati na rin po yung istorya ninyo ng migrasyon dito sa Canada.
Okay, hi. Thank you, Leah, for having me here. It's nice to be here. Magandang umaga, magandang hapon, magandang araw sa lahat. Ako ay si Gretchen Mangahas. Ako ay natuturing pa rin o nabibilang pa rin as one of the newcomers here in Canada. 3 taon pa lang, halos mag-4 na taon pa lang ako rito. Ako ay I am a member of the Ibaloy and Kankanaey Indigenous Peoples Communities of Benguet, which is one of the provinces of the Cordillera Administrative Region. And yes, I am a community leader. I belong to one of the Igorot communities here in Ontario. And what else can I say about myself? I'm a mother of 2 adults, and just like any other immigrant, I'm still, navigating my way around settlement, employment, and integrating myself into the Canadian community.
Ayan, salamat po. So, elaborate na lang din po yung mismong grupo ng community, grupo ninyo sa Ontario po, yung Kabenguetan po. Baka you can also talk more about that din po.
Okay, so the Association of Indigenous Peoples of People of Benguet, or also known as Kabenguetan, is a non-profit organization. It's been existing for 20 years, and we have around 300 or more members. And this is an organization where people or IPs belonging to the 13 municipalities of the province of Benguet are grouped, and it's a community that strives to support each other and to, as I mentioned, to try to live our traditional cultural ways, and at the same time use our values and our cultural practices, beliefs, and culture to help us get through our lives as immigrants here in Canada. So it's a very nice community, and I think most of us would try our best to find our community when we get here, when we migrate, right? So it's nice to have a community that is ready and very supportive to each other.
Ayan. So, moving on naman po din tayo sa kultura at tradisyon ng mga katutubo ng Benguet. So, maaari niyo po bang i-share sa amin kung particularly yung mga kultura nga at saka tradisyon ng mga katutubo sa Benguet?
Okay. Well, ang culture kasi is a way of living, right? So it's composed of your traditional beliefs, your practices, and more importantly, the values that drive these beliefs and these practices and this knowledge. The knowledge is the values would be shared. It's actually, these values are shared among a lot of or all of the indigenous peoples in the world. And first of all, we we live as a community. So we live as a collective. We support each other. We're not very individualistic. When we think about our lives, we are interconnected with each other, with our environment, and the bigger communities around us. And so we think that way. And this value of being interconnected and the value of living as a collective helps us get through the many centuries of life, given all the struggles that the world is going through. We are more sustainable in terms of our environmental responsibility to make our environment more sustainable. We also have sustainable practices in terms of farming, and also in terms of our health. We have traditional health practices that are also rooted in the values of understanding that the self is not separate from the world around you, right? And the people that you belong to, the people that and the community that you belong to. So that's one value. The other value is, of course, as I mentioned, environmentalism, and also our deep respect for our elders and for other people. So with these values, we have our tradition of and our practices of gathering together in very festive events or gatherings, where we have also our very unique dances, our unique music, our unique instruments. We also have our unique ways of storytelling, which is the vehicle where we pass on these values, these traditional practices, beliefs, and knowledge to the younger generation, so that it is more sustainable. So yeah, I think those are the greatest, the main values and the culture that I could share with you.
Yeah, I remember during a Diva event, we had the pleasure of joining the Bindian. I hope I pronounce our Bindian dance. I really felt the sense of community. So maiba naman po tayo, and focusing on mga issue na kinakaharap ngayon ng Kabenguetan diaspora community. So simulan po muna natin dito sa diaspora community, and then bumalik din po tayo sa nararanasan ng Kabenguetan community sa Pilipinas.
Mm-hmm.
So yun po munang diaspora.
Yeah, well, the reason why we are here is very basic, right? We always want to provide for our families and to have a better future for our community, our families. And it's very basic. It's one of the main reasons why we go abroad and we leave our family behind. And even our traditions and our culture and the environment where we thrive in. And most of our immigrants, or most of our members here are, they come here as PSWs, they come here as caregivers, they come here as skilled workers. So in that sense, the reason is also tied to the struggles that they encounter when they get here. There are, of course, the struggles of labor issues, unfair labor practices, and on top of that, we are considered as minorities back home, and then we still bring that sense of being a minority here. So it's like a multiple layer of burden that we encounter when we get here. So that's one thing that's one of the issues that we face. We of course have our employment and our settlement issues, just like any other immigrant. But as I mentioned, on top of that, we also have struggles with finding our voices and making sure that we are not being exploited as workers here in Canada. There's also some exploitation in terms of our international students. We've encountered problems with our international students having to pay exorbitant fees and being lied to. They're not given the correct information, and they're being exploited by agencies back home. So they end up coming here and not knowing how to how to live and how to get back all the resources that they've spent just to get here to Canada in search of a better life. That's their objective. So we also encounter all those issues, and of course we on top of that we also have issues about um, not being able to be a part of a bigger community because ngayon lang kami nag-start na parang okay, we have to start building our own identity, finding our identity, and then making sure that we become a part of the larger community so that we also have some voice in terms of perhaps contributing to policy making or influencing policy that would be beneficial also for our group. So in that sense, siguro when we go back to the Philippines, the biggest problem would be in Benguet would be the plight of the farmers. So because Benguet is known to be a province that grows most of the highland vegetables and supplies many provinces around our country, we have very resilient, hardworking farmers. However, they're also being exploited in terms of their income and their sales because of unfair labor practices. It's been an issue for a very, very long time, and it's really very frustrating to know that until now hindi pa rin natin nagagawa ng paraan na equitable naman sana yung ating pakikikalakal or ating trade with our farmers. So, and that's the reason why some farmers wouldn't want to farm anymore. There's also the introduction of pesticides and genetically modified organisms, and also we also have problems with in terms of not giving priority to local products. As I mentioned, those are unfair trade practices. Like when we've opened up importation of vegetables from other countries, so the competition is really very difficult for our local farmers. So the industry is struggling, and it's been a struggle for, as I mentioned, for a very, very long time. And so what do our people do? They try to find ways to sustain their families in other manners, and one of it is to go abroad and try to find income or try to support their families from there. So I think in Benguet that is really the main problem that most people there encounter.
Mm-hmm. So I was reading din po before the interview, was reading about the mining practices din po na Cordillera region talaga ang medyo target, and particularly Canadian mining ang nakakaapekto. So hindi ho nila ginagawa ng free, informed, and prior consent from the local communities.
Yes, for sure. I mean, FPIC is a policy or is a government process, right? So, as I mentioned, in Indigenous communities, we have two types of governing political organizations, or as I may say, structures. You have your traditional, meaning this is your traditional Indigenous community, Indigenous peoples organizations or Indigenous peoples how can I say this, structure, which has its own dynamics. Diyan na involve yung mga elders natin and how the community in itself, governed by its own cultural knowledge and practices, how they make decisions as a community. And then we have the existing government or the political government that is governed by the Republic of the Philippines. And when these two governments, there are two governments that actually exist in Indigenous peoples communities. And the sad thing is there are some communities, particularly in smaller areas, where we see collaborations. But unfortunately, hindi talaga rin nabibigyan ng boses yung ating genuine na traditional na mga political organizations or ating traditional structures. So in the end, there's still mas dominant pa rin talaga yung decision making ng ating government. And in essence, sometimes we still have to think about ano ba yung structure natin sa government ngayon? Does it really heed to the voices of the masses, or ito ba yung naglilingkod talaga para sa kabutihan ng ating mga komunidad? So we find hope in smaller communities, but unfortunately, when even when the national government comes in and then provides all those channels for exploitation, walang magagawa ang ating mga IP communities. So I'm saying this because that's one of the peculiarity of indigenous communities, where there's already dominance over the traditional ways of making decisions and making sure that the resources are not being exploited, making sure that the resources really serve the community. So there's degradation of those practices because hindi nga nagtutugma yung values siguro ng ating government, some of our government organizations, or some of our government how can I say this, government structures dun sa existing natin. Kasi as I mentioned, IPs communities are based on values of collective living, right? And then when you have capitalists coming in, iba din yung motivation, iba yung intentions. So unfortunately, dominated tayo ng ating government, and that's the sad thing about it. So when that happens, pag hindi malakas yung ating mga traditional organizations or political organizations, talagang magkakaroon na exploitation. So yeah, and for sure, we have our resources, talagang kawawa ang Benguet kasi talagang exploited talaga siya. And with the people being very peace-loving, hindi masyadong they're very peace-loving and they're very accommodating to other people. Kasi we have respect and we feel that we should respect each other. Mas matindi talaga ang exploitation sa probinsya ng Benguet.
Opo. So ngayon ko lang din po na nalaman yung sa sasabi niyo pong two government na may traditional saka yung sa government structure talaga. So that's a really good point po na I'm sure yung mga ilan po sa mga tagapakinig natin ngayon, hindi rin po sila aware. So ano po ba ang dapat isama ng ating presidenteng si Marcos Jr. Sa kanya kauna-unang SONA para mabigyang solusyon po ang mga alalahanin ng Kabenguetan community in the Philippines?
Yeah, so nabanggit ko naman na yung mga main problems, no? Like, I mean, how do we make the farming trade more equitable for the farmers? That's one thing. How do we make sure that land is given to the farmers and that there's not too much, para exploitation pagdating sa ating farmers? That's one thing. The other thing would be, of course, the protection of our environment and our resources. How do we make sure that they are sustained, yung sustainability ng ating environmental resources?
Let's end this on a positive note po ang ating kasi nag-usap tayo about challenges, about issue, at ano yung magagawa ng administrasyon para sa kapakanan ng ating mga IPs. Pero balik po tayo sa significant role ng community at sense of identity. So, maaari po ba kayong magbahagi ng halimbawa ng kultura o tradisyon na nagpaunlad ng pagkakakilanlan at nagpatatag ng komunidad particularly po sa Benguet?
Well, siguro yun na nga, yung sense of collective thinking. It's a value that we hold, and because of that value, we come together. We always think about our yung mga kasama namin. We always think about our community members. We always think, how can we help our community? For instance, let me give you an example. One of the practices that we have at Kabenguetan is the death aid. It's called death aid. But this is a practice that's been done even back home. Parang dinala namin ito hanggang dito sa Canada. When somebody dies, we make sure that we provide financial aid to the person who dies, and it's been incorporated in the organization. So pag nag-member ka, automatically you are given a death aid whenever your family member, your first degree family member passes away. So it's for us to say na we make sure that we take care of our members who has had a loss. Parang ganon.
Paano makakapagbigay ng suporta ang isang individual o isang organisasyon sa inisyatiba or initiatives ng grupo ng Kabenguetan po para ka magiging involved, collaboration, ganun po.
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, we also have immigration issues and challenges, and sometimes we don't know kung saan kukuha ng support. So I mean, the availability of services and having that information, us being aware where we can find support, and also having that support given to us in a way that's culturally sensitive then.
Ito na lang po, ang pahuling mensahe na lang po sa ating mga kababayan na nakikinig ngayon.
Ano ba? Ang Pilipinas the Philippines has more than 100 Indigenous peoples communities, and I'm sure there are a lot more communities here. We've like in Cordillera alone, we have a lot of Cordillera organizations here, and Benguet is just one. Iba din ang kultura ng mga Kalinga, ng mga taga Mountain Province, ng mga Ifugao, ng mga taga Apayao at Abra. So it would be nice if we would have, more participation siguro, or even collaborations with other communities here.
Ayan, salamat po ulit sa inyong time, Ate Gretchen. I really appreciate your time and your having this conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Maraming salamat kay Amihan at kay Gretchen Mangahas. Ako muli si Waynes, naghahatid sa inyo ng mga fresh na perspectives sa ating Pinoy talakayan at usapan o Pinoy tayo. Nakikinig kayo dito lamang sa Radyo Migrante ng Vibe 105.5 FM.
Siyempre, to stay updated sa happenings sa ating community, ito ang mga event at announcement. On July 21, ang grupong Philcan Creatives ay magho-host ng isang networking event para sa mga Filipino-Canadian creatives. Meron ding panelists na binubuo ng mga DJ, songwriter, actor at producer. Don't miss out. It's running from 7:30 p.m. to 9:30 p.m. at North York Central Library. Reserve your spot by searching up Spark Your Creativity, Philcan Creative. At pangalawa, on July 22 to 23 naman ay ang inaabangan na Fun Philippines Street Festival. Ito ay gaganapin sa Bathurst and Wilson Street with an expected 120 plus booths. Kainan, sayawan at iba pa. Libre ang admission, kaya tara na at sumali sa pagdiriwang ng All Things Filipino. And lastly, sa July 23, mark your calendars para sa People's State of the Nation Address. Isa itong aksyon ng mga progresibong organisasyon kung saan iba't ibang sektor ang maghahandog ng report patungkol sa tunay na kalagayan at kondisyon nila sa ilalim ng unang taon ni President Marcos Jr.
Alamin natin ang karanasan at pangangailangan ng ating mga kababayan na migrante, kababaihan, kabataan, manggagawa, magsasaka at iba pa. Tara't punta tayo dito sa PSONA.
Ang pagtitipon ay magaganap sa Bathurst and Wilson Market. Magkita-kita tayo doon, mga kababayan. At interesado ba po kayo maging bahagi ng Radyo Migrante? Halina't at sumali sa Radyo Migrante Collective. There are open positions for new researchers, scriptwriters, interviewers, co-hosts, editors, and social media coordinators. Message nyo lang po kami sa aming Instagram, Facebook, or email.
At dito nagtatapos ang isa na namang makabuluhang episode ng Radyo Migrante. O di ba, kaka-hello pa lang mag-goodbye na agad. Kung nabiting kayo, no worries mga kababayan. Ipagpapatuloy natin itong special PSONA o People's State of the Nation Address episodes kung saan susuriin natin kung ano ba ang kondisyon at mga panawagan ng bawat sektor ng ating lipunan.
Ang bilis talaga ng oras pagkasama ko po kayong lahat. Sa ulitin, kita-kits.
Sana po ay may natutunan kayo sa isang oras na pinagsaluhan natin. Please enjoy the rest of your day dahil bukas ay simula na naman ng hindi maiiwasang pagbabanat ng buto at ng patuloy na pakikipagsapalaran para sa ating mga mahal sa buhay. Padayon mga karadmig!
Sa tulong ng mga kababayan natin na bumubuo ng Radyo Migrante, kay Amihan at Gretchen Mangahas, President of Kabenguetan, kay Carl Ramirez para sa kanyang kantang Migranteng Filipino, at higit sa lahat sa inyo pong mga nakikinig sa Radyo Migrante tuwing linggo mula 1:00 hanggang 2:00 ng hapon. Maraming salamat po.
At hanggang sa susunod mga kababayan, muli,
Mabuhay po kayo at mabuhay ang bayang Pilipinas!